Hi, everyone. I am very much looking forward to this discussion. And I think this, virtual format that we're meeting in is, of course, in itself an example of how the world of work has changed just in the past 9 months. But of course, we have technologies like artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things that were creating, transformative change in various sectors and various industries even before the pandemic, and that are going to continue doing that after the pandemic. So there's some seismic, transformations that are happening all over the world as a result of new technologies, and I'm really glad that we have the panel today to help us make sense of it all. So I'm going to start off by asking, in general, for your impressions on, how are new technologies changing the structure of economies in various sectors and the way that we work. And we're going to start with Jed Kolko. He's the chief economist of Indeed.
Thanks very much, Anya. It's a pleasure to join the conference today. We often think about what the effect of new technologies is on the labor market and the broader economy. Of course, this is hardly a new question. We can point to many moments in both recent and distant history when technological advances really changed what the labor market looked like. If anything, rapid as change might feel today in the world, when we look at how much the labor market has changed over time by comparing how much the occupational mix of the labor market shifts or turns over each decade, this actually looks like a somewhat modest period in terms of labor market change, much less so than what we saw in the US, using US data at least, around the turn of the 20th century, and then again toward the end of World War II, when there was dramatic technological change affecting the economy and the labor market through the mechanization of agriculture, through manufacturing innovations, and then technologies that helped really change office work. Of course, there are enormous technological changes going on today, but so many of the themes that are important for understanding what it means and how fast it might happen are themes that we have all faced many times before in history. I think there are three things that I tend to come back to again and again in terms of themes about how technology affects the labor market and the economy. And I think these are three themes that are as relevant today as they were in some of those very rapid historical periods of technological change. The first is that the effect on the labor market and the economy always depends not just on what's technologically possible, but also on what's economically feasible. We often ask the question about whether robots will replace workers, whether automation will take away jobs. Part of the answer, of course, is about what automation can do. But it depends at least as much on the relative cost of automation versus wages. If wages go down, automation's likely to slow because the automation of various labor activities may make less sense if wages are lower and the relative prices of technology and human labor shift. So not only what's technologically possible, but what's economically feasible. The second theme that I think is perhaps the most important one is often technological changes aren't only about labor demand, but also about labor supply. Usually we think about technological changes in terms of how the demand for workers changes. Does it create jobs or destroy jobs? Does it complement existing human activities? Does it substitute for them? But some of the most profound technological changes that have affected the economy have been on the labor supply side. Arguably, the technology that may have had a bigger impact than any other in the past decade and many decades or half century was the pill. The pill, of course, suddenly changed the decision around investing in education, investing in career for women, and resulted in a dramatic increase in labor supply and formal employment among women starting in the 1960s and 1970s. arguably that technology had a bigger effect on the labor market and the economy than many other technologies that we often think of first, affecting the demand for labor. So not just labor demand, but also labor supply. And then finally, the third theme that I come back to again and again when we think about how technology affects the labor market and the economy is looking at the distributional effects. Who's helped? Who's hurt? How does it change the availability of jobs, the ability to spend, the effect on wages for different groups? There can be hugely different distributional effects by demographic group, by geographic area, by education level. Often we focus initially on the cutting edge. How does this technology affect the people who are in the best position to adopt it first? Though those typically aren't people who are typical of the economy or the labor market overall. And often technologies that may appear to have a favorable aggregate effect could also raise very challenging distributional issues if they widen or exacerbate inequality. So economic feasibility, labor supply, not just labor demand, and distributional effects. Thanks very much.
Thank you. And next up, we have William C. Stone. He's the chairman of the board of directors and chief executive officer at SS&C.
Thank you, and thanks everybody for being on today. You know, as I look at innovation and technology in 2020, you know, if you go back, you know, I started my company in 1986, and the big change was to go from batch processing to real-time processing. So you would put a transaction in, and you wouldn't know if it went in right or wrong until the next day. Whereas in the late 80s, it became instantaneous. So the productivity gain that you get is where you're going to find the ability for all society to embrace technology in ways that allow them to have a better life. You know, and as we bring technology out, certainly there's disruption and there is dislocation. But I think in societies that we all live in and want to live in, you know, we try to work with the people that have been dislocated and allow them to get re-educated and be able to be very productive with the newly learned skills that they acquire. And it's a belief in the people that they can do it. So in our view of the world, you know, the technology train is moving faster. And as it moves faster and faster, you know, organizations, whether they be corporations or governments or, you know, hospitals or other healthcare providers, you know, you have to decide when you're jumping on that train, right? Because you have to continuously upgrade your capabilities, but organizations themselves cannot handle rapid change in such a way that it becomes a whiplash, right? People have to be able to socialize the technology into their organization in a way that they get the productivity enhancements out of that technology. And then, as organizations are successful, as you have seen many in the last few years, almost unbelievably successful, you know, they are required, because it's just and it's right, to distribute some of that accumulation and be able to share it with the community and society at large. And I think technology is what allows us to feed 7 billion people on Earth, right? It allows us to be able to transport, and it allows us to, you know, maybe rapidly create a vaccine that is going to hopefully diminish the effects of something like the COVID pandemic. So I'm big proponent of technology, and I'm a big proponent in the justness of humans, not that all of them are so just.
And our next panelist is Charles-Edouard Bouet. He's the managing partner of Alpha Intelligence Capital.
Thank you, Angela. It's always a pleasure to be at the Conference of Montreal and to talk after Jed and Bill. And I'm like you, I'm optimistic. But I think that we have to think about as Jed mentioned, the trade-off between technology and humans. And as Bill mentioned, how you embrace technology for a better life with the challenge of the dark side of that trend you mentioned. But let me step back a bit. We all believe that we are in the technological era. We are not. We are in a massive cash abundance era with very low interest rates, which is yielding and accelerating technological changes. This is why we see a breadth and depth of technology appearing. This is why we have more and more unicorns. This is why we see on the stock markets and on the IPO so many tech companies. I call them the technological titans. The challenge we're having is this technology, and I think Jed mentioned it, is putting a huge deflation, a technological deflation on goods, and therefore a pressure on humans. At the same time, this abundance of technology is creating fears among people that see that there are people who have and people who have not, and people who can and people who cannot. And that challenges has yielded in some countries, and a lot of countries across the world, populism and these geopolitical titans. So we've been challenged by the COVID. For me, I think it's been a revelation of the world we were living in, the challenges. Some of us have been lucky to have, and some others have not been lucky not to have. Some people have been able to decide and move. Some people have not been able to decide and move. And that's where we are heading. We are seeing an acceleration, an amplification of this movement. So we will have, as you mentioned, Bill, more technology with good things and challenging things. We have some real risk. And for me, I mean, and I think that's going to be discussed in this panel, I see two risks. One is how you balance technology and humans and how you blend it for the better of the humans. And the second is how you finance this transition to avoid violence or to avoid that some people are left over in that trend you mentioned, Bill. So I think this is the topics I wanted to share with you.
And as you mentioned, obviously we're in the middle of a pandemic. We've seen some massive changes just in response to COVID. And I'm curious for your thoughts about how COVID has accelerated or maybe even slowed down some of these changes, and how many of them are temporary. We're all working from home. Is that all just going to go away once we have the vaccine and everything goes back to normal? What are the lasting changes that we can expect from COVID when it comes to how we work?
Me? Okay.
Anybody. Sorry, anybody. Just jump in.
It's open panel. So maybe I start, and then Bill and Jed can add on. I think we've seen an acceleration, as you said. We've been able, thanks to this technology, to work from home, which would have been impossible with our old mobile phone, the one you mentioned, the technology you mentioned, Bill. We were able to order food, to entertain ourselves, to watch the soccer, the football game on our screens. And last but not least, to keep a social connection with our families, even though it was not real. I believe that we have accelerated time and that things will continue. I also believe that at the end of the day, we are not digital image like we are in this conference. We are organic machines. And we need to meet people. We need to hug people. We need to be in a crowd and watch a football game. And I think that what we will see is a rebalancing. But a lot of things that have changed in the last months will stay for long because people will realize that it's much more efficient. Technology is bringing a lot of good things. We need to keep our humanity.
I think, I agree with that. And I also think that, necessity is the mother of invention, right? So, we go from no one working from home to entire companies with 100,000 people working from home, right? And then, as Jed said early on, the pill was a very big enabler of a mass influx of labor. But there's also today where the pill wasn't used, where there's an awful lot of child rearing and trying to teach your children from home, and that whole paradigm of being able to do your job, take care of your family, right, and be able to still have some fulfillment in your life, no matter what that is. And so I think this pandemic and this rapid change in technology is going to have a lot of long-lasting implications.
And a couple more thoughts just to add to that. I think we often, during this period, we've often thought first about existing changes that the pandemic has accelerated, changes that may have been pulled forward in time. I think there are a couple counterexamples to that. One of the most notable things about this pandemic in terms of consumer spending and employment is that there's been a big increase in spending on goods rather than services, and a corresponding shift in employment, where employment in services has fallen much more than employment in goods-related sectors. And of course, that is the opposite of the direction that economy and society had been going. For years, we've been hearing about people buying less stuff and spending more on experiences. And as people get richer, there are only so many coffee makers they can buy. Instead, we see a ratcheting up in the amount and kind of travel people do. Well, this year's been a reversal of that. It's been a shift back to cooking at home and buying exercise equipment as opposed to eating in restaurants and going to the gym. And I think one big question is how much of that trend continues. We don't know yet whether this reflects in part a longer-term trend in spending patterns where people are essentially insourcing more activities into their home, or whether we return to this ongoing shift from goods to services. So I think that's one counterexample to the pandemic accelerates things that are already underway. I think the other is the pandemic probably creates some different expectations around the sharing economy. Hot desking, the sort of sharing of desks in office space, might look a little bit less appealing now that we've all just experienced a year of contagious disease. There may be other forms of sharing that we had been embracing, and people will now think twice about. So I think, and if we thought carefully, there are probably other examples, counterexamples to the pandemic accelerating trends that were already underway. So I just want to make sure we keep those things in mind too, in addition to all of the trends that the pandemic may be accelerating.
And what are the key technologies that all of you would say you're keeping an eye on that you think might cause the greatest change, that are causing great change now and that might be causing even further change down the road? Is artificial intelligence going to change all?
I can get started. I'm an investor in artificial intelligence. I've been writing a book on the topic. And I'm investing across the world from America to Asia to Europe. I believe in the next 10 years, artificial intelligence, step by step, is going to change the world the same way the mobile internet changed the world. And if you look at the numbers, we have a lag time of 10 years. Today, we are exactly where we were 1 year after the iPhone was invented and was released when it comes to AI. And if you look at the curve, there was a plateau of 3 or 4 years, and then a huge acceleration in the mobile internet. So that's where we are. So in 10 years from now, it will be everything, everywhere for everyone. I call it the E3. It will have infused in every single industry because AI is not AI, it's not an artificial intelligence, which is, by the way, an oxymoron because it doesn't exist. There's artificial and there's intelligence. It is something that is like an algorithmic science, mathematical model that helps you to do the job better, to remove any repetitive task when it comes to business activities. So my prognosis is within the next 10 years, mega shift in the way we operate. And at the same time, in the coming years, a lot of deception because people were expecting more from artificial intelligence than it can deliver today because of data and availability.
I think that's right. Again, I think, one of the things to realize is that, before there was Microsoft Word, there was Word Perfect. And before Word Perfect, there was Multimate, right? So, and before that, there was something else. And there was VisiCalc and Lotus 1-2-3, right? And then Excel. And so, organizations with the resources and drive to be able to, both create improved product, or in general, what people think are improved product, and be able to price it in a way and distribute it in a way, and then be able to have enough customer service that people are satisfied or even more than satisfied. I think those are the things that, get wrapped around, technologies like AI or machine learning or natural language processing or robotic process automation. Really, it's that human spirit, that collaboration, and then that drive. Someone's got to drive that home. And if they don't, then it starts to sort of crumble. And then other participants get a chance to participate in that field of endeavor, similar to automobiles and what Elon Musk has done at Tesla.
Yeah, in addition to some of the changes around pure AI, I think some of the interesting both applications and adjacent technologies include those around energy, both energy creation and storage and transfer, and around transportation technology. So many of the economic and societal changes that we experience, whether it's the expansion of labor markets to larger areas or freeing up time to work or for leisure, has come from innovation to transportation technology. Whether that makes it possible for people to live much farther from where they work, or makes it possible for people to spend much less time commuting or chauffeuring their children around. These are all technologies that tend to have an outsized social impact. And so those are other ones that I'm looking forward to seeing what the future brings.
And when you say, I just wanted to ask, when you say, transportation technologies, are we talking high-speed trains? Are we talking, mentioned the sharing economy? I know car sharing here in Montreal is popular. I use it. What kind of transportation technologies might be on the horizon that might change everything?
I'm certainly not an expert in the future of transportation technology. I think to the extent that there are more energy efficient and electric vehicles that have longer and longer range, as well as eventually perhaps autonomous vehicles in some contexts are the kinds of technologies that longer term can help reshape where we live and how we spend much of our time.
And I would say the software that allows an Uber or a Lyft or others that are doing the shared rides and the kind of the gig economy, and you could take the same thing to Airbnb that I think just went public this week at an enormous evaluation and I think that again, once these things get harnessed, an electric car or an internal combustion car really has four wheels and gets you from A to B. It's not as transformational as maybe the ability pick up your iPhone and say, "Hey, pick me up here," and get chauffeured to here, right? I mean, that was, unheard of, or renting your house out for 3 days, and stuff like that is just, kind of the quality of the human intellect is pretty high in lots of people.
It sounds like it's not just, that's a good point. It's not just the technology, but it's the way that we use it and how easy it is to spread and to use. I mean, you could always rent out your house theoretically through the newspaper or something, but it wasn't until there was an easy to use website or an app, like you said, where you could call a car that it really kind of blew up. And we've mentioned a couple of different sectors that have already been changed and disrupted by technology. Are there any specific industries that you think are undergoing significant change right now? And are there any that are getting left behind?
Yeah, I can get started. I think that there's a huge transformation taking place. And there are more differences within industries than between industries. In the past, we had some industries were moving faster, growing, some other were lagging behind. Now with technology, you can see that some old-fashioned industries, like renting, can be totally transformed by technology. You can see that in the car industry, why would it be Tesla that creates this huge market capitalization while the others, the traditional ones, are creating lower market cap? So one of the biggest challenges I see on technology is the people who have legacy have a huge challenge when it comes to this transformation, which is driven by necessity, as Bill said, because this innovation driven by necessity with technology is creating such a gap that people are willing to put so much money on this future investment. When it comes to artificial intelligence, I have a rule of thumb. It's mostly for high-ticket items where you have a lot of compounded intelligence that you're trying to master, where the machine do better, or high volume, low tickets. And this is two areas where we see a lot of things moving. This is why we see a lot of research going on the pharmaceuticals, and we've seen the results of DeepMind recently. And this is also why we see a lot of RPA, as Bill mentioned, going on, because we can automate repetitive intellectual tasks. So I see more as a transformation across industries than between industries.
I think too. Again, the point you make about how things improve. Now, we used to use highways and stop every 10 or 20 miles and give somebody 50 cents or toss it into something or $1 or something or a franc, and then then it becomes Easy Pass or whatever allows you to go through without stopping, right? And then you could only go through without stopping at, say, 5 or 6 miles an hour. And then it was 15 miles an hour, and then it was 30 miles an hour, and now you can go as fast as you want, as long as you don't get a ticket, right? I mean, so technology not only brings about change, but it refines itself and continues to make it better. I mean, if you think about the smartphones and the BlackBerry and how great and far ahead it was, and then touch screens, and I don't know if you remember the first touch screens, but they were not particularly easy to use. And now they're ubiquitous. They're everywhere. They're in your car. They're on your television. They're on your PC or mobile device or whatever. And I just think, it not only gets changed, but it gets refined. And then it gets mass acceptance, and then it gets lower prices. And then it's a fascinating thing to watch as new things come out.
Sorry, Jed, did you want to jump in?
You passed.
And I also wanted to talk about barriers that some people might, industries, sectors, businesses might be facing. Maybe they want to adopt new technologies or they can't. For example, I'm a telecom reporter. I read a lot about rural broadband in Canada. There's a lot of people here that don't have adequate internet access, and that means they can't really participate in the, many aspects of the digital economy. So are there any industries, economies that you can think of that aren't able to take advantage of these technologies, and if so, why?
Perhaps all of them, and often for non-technological reasons, whether it's the concerns or objections of a group of people whose jobs might be changed, or owners or decision makers for whom the cost of transition is high. I think there's, it's probably easier to think it's probably harder to think of examples of technological adoption that went without barriers than those that face barriers. But again, I think, in some cases, the barriers to technological adoption are themselves technology related, but probably more often it has to do with entrenched institutions or existing incentives or other economic, institutional, and social barriers than the technological barriers themselves.
Yeah, maybe to build on Jed, I mean, it's very clear that the first question people are asking themselves is, what's in it for me? There's this new technology, what's in it for me? So some of the technology is very easy because, you're getting a phone, someone explaining you don't have to stay at home to wait for your grandma's call because you can pick it in the street. So that's quite easy. On the other hand, I think that we are facing two challenges. One is education. The pace of technology, the abundance is making people have difficulty to be aware of everything because when they pass a certain level of education, there is no refreshing. So we have to help our citizens to refresh themselves and be aware of what's possible. Because when you have something and you don't know how to use it, it's very difficult. I mean, there are some simple goods, but there are some more complex goods. And then the second point is, you mentioned it, Jed, is the transition. The psychological transition of all these legacy companies that are producing cars which have a combustion engine. And this is where you make most of your money. So it's very difficult to tell everyone, we're going to close down the factory and we're going to do electrical cars. And this applies to every single industry. I've worked, in more than 15 industries across the world, 25 countries, and it's always the same problem. It's what's in it for me? And people have to start with business usage, or commercial usage, instead of thinking about technology first and then usage after.
That's right. And if you look at telecom, for instance, I mean, no one would be putting up wooden or steel poles and stringing wire up and down streets for literally millions of miles in 2020. So a lot of the countries that didn't have that infrastructure and were thought to be, behind, get to put in only mobile technology, right? Only cellular. AT&T developed cellular in 1947, but they had such a franchise in landlines that they didn't want to disrupt their landlines. Kodak could make digital photos, I think in something like 1970, but their film business was so profitable that, it was like eating your young. It's just so difficult to move away from that thing we know how to do. It's pretty comfortable, and we're going to go into this brave new world. And I think that's as Charles said, I think that's a very, very difficult transition.
To build on Bill and Jed, two things. One is a word that you rarely use, which is called arriération in French. I don't know the English word, which is basically what you mentioned, Bill, which is at some stage you're so backward then you can leapfrog because you don't have any of the legacy system. So it's called arriération, which is you're so backward that you are forward in a sense. And the second thing I want to share with the audience a story, which is a true story. Back in 2000, I'm a young partner, actually, not a consultant partner. I'm merging two telecom companies in Europe, France Telecom and Orange. And I'm asking to merge all the department. And at some stage, I go to the strategy department. And I meet someone, an American guy, who was the head of futurology, Kenny Hirschhorn. At that time, remember, all the big telecom operators were the master of the world, the Deutsche Telekom, the British Telecom, the Orange. They were the master of the world because, as you said, Bill, they were building 2G networks, GP, and across the world, they were buying all the operators. They were not thinking about anything else that I buy an American operator. Deutsche Telekom bought things in the US. And then the guy, I come to his office, he said, Mr. Boué, you're a strategy consultant? I said, yes. He said, he showed me a phone, something that didn't look like this. It looked like a small Nokia. He said, what is this? I said, it's a phone, a mobile phone. He said, you have no clue. Then he showed me the phone again, and he said, I give you a second chance. I said, oh, it's a Nokia. And the guy says, and he showed me this. We are in 2000, January, okay? He says, this is the remote control of your life. This guy was fired for incompetency. Who would believe that one day this Motorola would become the remote control of your life? Today, we would be laughing at me if I said this is not the remote control of your life. So one point, and I think you mentioned it, Bill, because you have a long history and experience, people always look at things around them, and when someone is a bit with a foresight, they don't listen to him. And it's even worse. The more the companies are making money, the bigger they are, the more difficult it is. That's why until recently, Microsoft was very much challenged. They invented the iPad, didn't work. They invented all kinds of stuff. It's until the new leadership shifted to the new storage and business storage and this thing that it worked. So again, it's all in the mind of the leaders.
Yeah, you have to have leaders that are, curious enough and willing enough to make bets on all kinds of things. And there will be the ash heap of bad bets. But you don't have to have too many iPhones or iPads or Macs or any other winner to overwhelm all the bus, right? But you have to have enough resources, and you have to have some winners. If you don't have any winners, then it becomes like a death march. And one other thing I think about technology that we all are very familiar with, I think it's going to be the death of paper money, right? So it's, we don't use it as much anymore. People walk through, wave their phone, wave their credit card, wave whatever. But the use of paper money or coins is rapidly headed south.
That's an interesting point.
Oh, sorry, please go on.
No. I am a big believer that, especially with COVID, but before, we've seen an acceleration of the virtual world, that without realizing, we move from a full physical world in an office with people to a virtual world where our kids or sometimes ourselves are playing video games. We are watching, movies on the internet and so on. So that is changing, and coins, this virtual digital money, become a currency. And if you go to some of the most famous games, you would see people buying shirts, exchanging goods that have no real value. Real value. They have an intrinsic value of a digital world, but you will not buy them with physical money.
And that's.
I'm sorry, Bill.
I'm sorry, Sanjay. It's, and how long has there been coins? 5,000 years? I mean, they've been here. Yeah, that's just, it's just the rapidity of change in finance, right? The ATMs, right? And, you know, I mean, I don't know when the last time any of you were, but, you know, I might have gone into a bank once or twice in the last year, maybe, you know, and so it's just, again, I mean, I'm older than everybody, but, you know, as I grew up, you know, if you wanted to get money, you had to go to the bank, you know, and now, you know, you just go up to an impersonal machine and chop in a few numbers. That's right. And phew, out spewed money. Of course, you had to have some in there, I think, but I think that again are changes in our society that, you know, my children and you know, hopefully my grandchildren, you know, will see technological change even more rapid than what we've seen.
And we've talked about, you know, when we are talking about this adoption and, you know, some barriers that exist, I'm wondering is there a space or is there a responsibility on the part of, for example, governments to make sure that people don't get left behind? Or when it comes to technological adoption, is it, like you were mentioning earlier, is it best to just leave it to markets and businesses will adopt technology as it makes sense business-wise, and it doesn't make sense to push anything beyond that?
I mean, I think the more you can set guardrails up and have principle-based rules, the better off everything is. If you have detailed, you can't do this and you can't do that and you can't do this and you can't do that, so it becomes rules-based rather than principles-based, then I think you start to thwart innovation. But I think people that break the principles, they ought to get whacked. You know, I mean, you have to penalize bad behavior. And if you don't do that, then you have bad behavior everywhere. You know, at the same time, it has to be clear what is considered bad behavior and what is considered good behavior. And as soon as that is ambiguous, then right and wrong becomes ambiguous. And that's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. And Anka, the question is correct. We are living in a world of modern states, which is very new, only 100 years. And the leaders of this modern state have to define rules. So, you know, and sometimes it becomes so complex that people get lost and they prefer to go for some different regimes. I think one of the paradox we are facing is, on the one hand, technology is giving abundance. You know, everything is deflationary. You can watch a movie for 1 cent, 10 cents, a series. When you were, before going to the movie theater, you were spending $5 plus some food, $10, $15. Now you're spending $15 a month to see unlimited videos. So there's this part, which is the positive part. On the other side, it's very bad time to be average. Because in a world where the people, and I think both Bill and Jed said it, people who harness technology get onto the Hyperloop, and people who don't, they just get left behind. And one will be amassing tons of coins that the other one thing is valueless. But at the end, this coin will be worth billions of dollars, and the other one will be still trying to feed his children. So the government has a lot of things at stake to find the balance between simple rules, as you mentioned, basic rules, and helping this paradox not to be too big in the long run.
I think one of the biggest challenges, though, that comes with trying to set principles for how technology and business should work is that sometimes technology ends up changing the rules. So if we move from a world where many markets are competitive to some markets are natural monopolies with strong network effects, then the principles that might have served us well for taking advantage of and ensuring a more equal distribution of the benefits from new technology may no longer apply. And I think some of the biggest technology policy challenges that we have today may come from trying to hold on to and impose consistent principles that may have applied well in the past, but have become obsolete now. And so I think, when there is change, there needs to be a balance between the extent to which there are consistent principles that still apply and a need to update rules in markets where technologies have changed them.
I think you're right. I think it can't be static principles any more than it can be static rules, right? It has to be dynamic, and you have to have bright enough people in positions of power to recognize when things are due for change, and that's a constant process, a constant vigilance, and it's constant wisdom, and constant wisdom is a very difficult thing to acquire.
And I imagine another challenge is also in terms of who sets the rule is that technology doesn't care about, national borders. It doesn't care about, nation states. So we have, for example, even now these, big, web giants, international tech companies, and, the regulations that are being put in place at the country level, but you're trying to regulate, a company that operates all over the world. So there's also a certain need for coordination when it comes to answering some of these questions too, I imagine, and that will be another challenge.
I think that Bill said it at the beginning. Defining universal rules are very difficult because if you're talking to Chinese people, they've been there for thousands of years with their own wisdom. You talk to American people, they've been, you build this great country with entrepreneurship, and you talk to Europeans, we have this old tradition that sometimes are good, sometimes are totally useless. So it's very difficult in a world where everyone can grab the technology to define rules. Is it better to have taxis or Uber or both? There are cities in this planet where you cannot have a Uber. In Berlin, in Italy, you cannot grab a Uber. There are countries you can find both. And there are countries where the taxis have almost been eradicated. So it's very difficult to define rules because it also depends on the local environment. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges we're facing. We are trying to have one planet with one group of humans, while in reality, we've been there for thousands of years and we have evolved in a different direction. And there's no right or wrong. There are our culture, our roots. And that's what I'm a technologist that loves to have human augmented intelligence, where technology blends with human to do something better and not forgetting the roots.
Well, I think France wants to be France.
Yeah.
Spain wants to be Spain, and Canada wants to be Canada. And, it's hard to decide that, okay, well, there's not going to be any more England. Well, who made you decider of what societies make it and which ones don't? I think, the power of the collective wisdom of a society is what's going to allow that society to flourish or to fail. And, there are failed countries all over Earth, and in some ways tragically failed, and I think it again comes back to, having principles and having some sense of justness and fair play and again, that you help people. You don't have to do handouts, right? You give people a hand up, right? You can help. I think it's incumbent upon those that can to do, not just talk about it.
And, we've been talking a lot about, what are the changes that are happening right now. We're observing things that we can see happening. But I always think about a 5G and, 5G is just starting now. There's companies are rolling out networks that real 5G still hasn't come. We don't have standalone networks. And we still don't know what the use case is going to be. Like you were mentioning earlier with 4G, we didn't know that mobile video was going to take off the way that it did. Mobile video and social networks. So to wrap it up, I guess this will be my last question. What is it how confident can we be in any of these predictions that we've made? What is it that we don't, how much of it do we not know about what to expect from the future and what kind of technological change we're going to see?
I think there are probably some areas where we need to be much more humble in our predictions, particularly around the actual... Sorry. Apologies if I was speaking over someone.
No, I think it was a kind of glitch, but go on.
Okay, go on.
So I think, but I think we can actually make fairly reliable predictions around human nature and the way that social hierarchies and organizations and institutions respond or resist technologies. I think my sense is that we are often overconfident in predicting things about the innovations themselves on the technological side, but underconfident or too slow to use the knowledge that we already have about how institutions and social structures work to reinforce or block technological changes.
I mean, my view of technological changes, particularly in the United States, Sputnik back in the late 50s scared the United States, scared Americans. So Americans started praying to a science god. And they've been praying to a science god ever since. So that's now, 63 years that, science. But what happens is all kinds of money starts flowing to science, trillions. And then it's not science anymore, it's politics. And the challenge to be able to look at what is happening and making sure that there's some purity somewhere on what is, I'm an accountant, I'm not a scientist. But I thought I knew what scientific method was, but I don't think I know anymore.
And I think this is totally correct what you just said, because let's make no mistake, things not going to slow, things going to go accelerating. And we're going to have more and more of these titans, whether they are geopolitical or technological. And it's up to us as leaders to build a better future. And I think that's the thing that I'm believing more.
Well, I think we'll have to leave it there. But thank you very much for taking the time for this discussion this afternoon. It was very, very interesting. So Jed, Bill, Charles-Edouard, thank you very much. It's been great talking to you.
Merci. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.